Babylon was originally a city-state of ancient Mesopotamia. The ruins of this city-state have been discovered today in Hilla, Babel, approximately 85 kilometers south of the capital city Baghdad, Iraq. In ancient times, Babylon played an important role in politics, being passed from one conqueror to another across different eras, sometimes declining, sometimes reviving. However, Babylon persists in history as a semi-mythical site, often referred to as the first metropolis of the ancient world. Its proximity to the Euphrates River and favorable climate made this city the capital of a city-state with a peak population of up to 200,000 people. At the center of Babylon stood a multi-tiered religious structure called a ziggurat, reaching a height of up to 90 meters, which initially served as a temple and later became an administrative center. During their stay in Babylon in the 16th century, European visitors mistook the large ruins of a ziggurat for the legendary Tower of Babel, which explains the diversity of languages among the world's peoples. Nebuchadnezzar II, circa 642 to 562 BCE, is called the most successful ruler of Babylon. After several centuries of decline, under his rule, the country began to develop in all aspects. Nebuchadnezzar's reign is also known as the Babylonian Renaissance, during which he waged many wars, conquered new territories, and developed the country's culture and economy. During his reign, the famous Hanging Gardens were built and became one of the 7 wonders of the world. In 331 BCE, Alexander the Great and his army approached Babylon, and the city surrendered without a fight, declaring Alexander as the king of Babylon. He proclaimed Babylon as his Asian power capital. Alexander the Great did not destroy the pagan temples in the polis, but instead ordered their restoration. Famous commander died in Babylon during a banquet. After his death, the city was occupied by the Parthians, who established 2 capitals, Seleucia and Ctesiphon, while Babylon gradually fell into decay and became abandoned. What do we know about the mysterious Babylonian gardens? Although traces of the Hanging Gardens have not yet been found, we know of their existence through the works of ancient Greek historians Herodotus, Strabo, and Diodorus Siculus. Thus, their existence cannot be denied. Today, scientists continue to debate where these mysterious gardens might have been located, who created them, and why they disappeared without a trace. The earliest reference to the Hanging Gardens is found in the writings of the ancient priest Berossus, who came from Babylon and later moved to the Greek island of Kos, leaving notes in Greek. He described that the Hanging Gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II, and Sol, his wife Amyadis, who greatly missed her homeland, the lush, hilly region of Media, Iran. For this purpose, special multi-tiered stone structures were created, filled with soil brought from the Media Mountains. Many types of plants and vines from Amyadis's homeland, which were not commonly found in the arid regions of Babylon, were also planted. The Hanging Gardens were high stone terraces, mimicking mountains, with large trees and exotic plants. To care for the plants, a special irrigation system was created, and the different terraces were lined with materials like reeds and asphalt to prevent water from seeping through the terraces. According to descriptions by ancient historians, one could not walk from one end of the Hanging Gardens to the other without becoming tired due to the steep slopes and varying heights of each planting terrace. Although no traces of the Hanging Gardens have been discovered, German archaeologist Robert Koldewey, famous for his extensive excavations of ancient Babylon, discovered a series of unusual rooms and vaults there. One of them contained the remains of a well, possibly part of an underground structure for irrigating the once existing garden. According to his records, these structures were built by Babylonian King Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century BCE and were located near his palace in Babylon. However, later sources in that Hanging Gardens existed in the 4th century BCE and were built in Nineveh. There are even depictions of the Hanging Gardens on a relief from the North Palace of Ashurbanipal, now housed in the British Museum in London. While one does not exclude the other, perhaps these gardens were predecessors to those in Babylon. Most researchers agree that these extraordinary gardens, considered one of the wonders of the world, did not actually hang in the air. Possibly, there was a long-standing mistranslation from the Greek word kremastos, or the Latin word pensilius, both used to describe gardens that might imply balcony or terrace. This is supported by evidence from Greek historian Strabo, who in the 1st century BCE described the gardens as a structure of terraced arches stacked on each other and supported by cube-shaped columns. Other ancient sources also note that the gardens were planted on stone terraces and situated under massive stone vaults. The Hanging Gardens are also known as the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, named after the legendary Assyrian ruler responsible for rebuilding Babylon in the 9th century BCE. Despite extensive research, there is still no consensus among historians and experts about where the mysterious Hanging Gardens were located or whether they existed. Perhaps this confusion arises from the varied accounts of different ancient historians. Dr. Stephanie Daly of Oxford University spent over 2 decades researching the Hanging Gardens, piecing together clues from ancient texts and deciphering cuneiform inscriptions. She concluded that these gardens were not built by the Babylonians, but by their neighbors and arch-enemies, the Assyrians. Additional confirmation for this hypothesis might be a relief from ancient Nineveh, housed in the British Museum, depicting the palace complex of Sennacherib, in a garden with trees hanging over terraces and vaults. There is abundant textual and archaeological evidence of gardens in Nineveh, and the city itself was sometimes called Old Babylon. Regardless, even if the Nineveh hypothesis is accepted, it does not rule out the possibility that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon appeared later. Why did the Hanging Gardens of Babylon disappear? Since the exact location of the Hanging Gardens has not been identified, it is impossible to predict precisely when and how they ceased to exist. There are many theories on this matter, but none can be deemed reliable. It is believed that the gardens gradually began to collapse after the fall of the Babylonian Empire, and were eventually destroyed following the Persian conquest of Babylon. However, a legend says that Alexander the Great was very fond of the abandoned but still magnificent Hanging Gardens. They reminded him of his home, and he enjoyed spending time there, breathing his last breath among them. By the early 2nd century CE, due to endless wars, Babylon completely fell into decline, was entirely destroyed along with the gardens, and turned into ruins. Another legend suggests that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were destroyed by frequent flooding of the Euphrates River. Additionally, there is an ancient record stating that in the 1st century BCE, an earthquake occurred in Babylon, destroying the marvelous garden. However, all these remain speculative. Perhaps in the future, modern technology will allow us to learn more about Babylon, the jewel of the ancient world, and uncover the 2,500-year-old mystery of the legendary Hanging Gardens.